Trump said he wanted peace. He said it again and again. He wanted peace with Iran. Diplomats were negotiating. The deal was almost finished. And the very next morning, bombs fell. So the obvious question is, did Trump lie? Or are we asking the wrong question entirely? Because this question assumes something very convenient. It assumes the problem is Trump. But I think this is the easiest lie we tell ourselves. Because if the problem is Trump, then remove Trump and the world will become peaceful. But history doesn't support that. Before Trump, there were wars. After Trump, there will be wars. Different leaders, different countries, but the pattern remains same. So maybe the problem is not a single leader. Maybe the problem is human mind itself. So why aren't we questioning the deepest root itself, which initiates such outcomes? Jiddu Krishnamurti once said something very uncomfortable. He said, "The world is not separate from you. You are the world." At first this sounds poetic, but if you really look at it, it holds a very, very deeper meaning. Because if you are the world, then the violence of the world must also exist in you. Not on the battlefield, but in the small daily movements of the thoughts. When you get angry, when you want to prove you are right, when you want to dominate someone, when you divide people into us and them, when the structure is exactly the same structure that creates wars, just scaled up. The mind says, my country, my religion, my ideology, my side is already preparing a ground for conflict. War is simply that psychology multiplied by millions of people. So when Trump ordered the strike on Iran, the easy story is that one man caused the war. But this explanation is quite childish because Trump didn't invent nationalism. Trump didn't invent division. Trump didn't invent a psychological structure that sees the world in terms of enemies. Human beings created that structure thousands of years ago. And Trump is just an byproduct of that. Not only Trump, but almost all the world leaders. Not only the world leaders, but almost all of us. And we keep feeding it every day. Through identity, through belief, through ideologies, through the constant need to belong to a side. Look at how quickly people choose sides. Look at how quickly people choose groups. Pro-Trump, anti-Trump, pro-America, pro-Iran. Everyone immediately picks a team. Nobody pauses to ask a much deeper question. Why does human brain need enemy at all? Why do we feel secure only when we belong to a group that stands against another group? It is the real root of violence. The psychological division. The moment the mind says we, it automatically creates them. And once that division exists, conflicts become inevitable. It may not happen tomorrow, but sooner or later, it will. Think about something simple. The last time you had an argument with someone who you care about, maybe a friend, maybe your parents, maybe a partner. At some point, the conversation stopped being about truth. It became about winning, about defending your position, about protecting your identity. That tiny psychological movement is the seed of a bigger war, because nations behave exactly the same way. They defend their position, they defend their pride, they defend their identity, and once identity is involved, reason becomes useless. This is why blaming one leader is strangely comforting, because it allows us to believe that the rest of us are innocent. Every time you hate someone because they belong to a different group, you are contributing to the same movement. Every time you feel superior because of the nationality, religion, ideology, you are strengthening the psychology that eventually leads to war. Now, this doesn't mean that leaders have no responsibility. Of course, they do. Trump made decisions, people died. That matters. But focusing only on leaders is like blaming the final spark of the forest fire that has been building up for decades. The dry wood was already there, the wind was already blowing, the conditions were already perfect for combustion. All those conditions exist in human mind. The problem of the war, the root cause of the war, cannot be stopped politically, not by treaties, not by negotiations, not by better leaders, because the political world is simply the projection of human mind. Because if the mind remain divided, the world will remain divided, and the conflicts will appear every now and then. New treaties will be signed and they will collapse. New wars will appear. Different flags, same violence. So the real question is not, was Trump right? The real question is much more deeper. Why does the human mind constantly recreate conflicts? Why do we need enemies? Why do we cling to ideologies that divide us from each other? And more importantly, can the mind ever be free from that structure? Because if it cannot, the war is not an accident of history. It is simply natural outcome of how we think. But until that happens, we will keep repeating the same patterns. New leaders, new wars, new justifications, different headlines, same human mind. Maybe the contradiction is not in politics. Maybe the contradiction is in us.